Author of Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963, and Survival of the Richest, Donald Jeffries separates the real from the unreal. Fact from fiction. Reverse engineering our manufactured reality. And now, from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., this is I Protest with Donald Jeffries.
And welcome to I Protest. This is Donald Jeffries here with you, coming to you from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as the man says, every Friday from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. We have another great show highlighting the January 6th incident, where we still have, I think, the foremost political prisoners we've had maybe since the Civil War still sitting in Washington, D.C. I don't know how many of them. Denied all due process for 3 years. Jack Cashill has been on the show a couple of times, a prolific author. He's going to discuss his new book, Ashley, The Untold Story of the Women of January 6th. You might remember him. We had him on for his last book, Untenable, The True Story of White Ethnic Flight from America's Cities. He's written a couple books about Obama. And he also, a lot of my listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with his work on TWA Flight 800. So, Jack, welcome to the show.
Hey, Don, thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So you're like me. You like to write about a lot of different subjects, and there are subjects that I think we're both interested in. So how did you get involved? I mean, I'm sure you probably watched the insurrection in the same light that I did. And
I was following it from day one, and for the first and only time, with a certain conservative publication for which I write. I'm not going to name names because I still write for them. They edited my piece on January 6th, and this was like just a few days after January 6th. And I concluded the piece. I said, in the future, January 6th will be remembered as a midwinter 4th of July. They cut that out, right? They weren't ready for that. I think I'm right. I think it will be. It'll take a little while, but it's the movement has begun, because what we're beginning to see is that there was an excellent reason for 1 million people to show up in Washington on that day. Those were the more observant and nobler and more bold among us, not the craziest. And what they have done, not intentionally, is shown to the world just the incredibly repressive character of the Biden DOJ. And the Biden DOJ is merely an extension of the Obama DOJ, or what would have been the Hillary DOJ. It's a thoroughly, fascistic culture, and it's taken root. And I say this, I'm not even exaggerating when I say fascistic. It's hard to know what a real fascist would have done differently than what the quasi-fascists in Washington have been doing these last, since 2015, these last 9 years.
Right, and we just look at something on January 6th again. The fact that, I mean, I'm an old lefty. When I was a teenager, I was a card-carrying member of the ACLU, and I used to believe in them very strongly. And I don't know what happened to civil libertarians in America, but there aren't any, because if they were, they would be standing outside the D.C. prison and demanding to know why these people haven't had due process, demanding to know why they were beaten, kept in solitary confinement. And those are the ones that are still there. Of course, the ones that have gone to trial haven't been fortunate. I was reading in your book about, God, and I just forgot her name. I had her on my show not that long ago. This sweet grandmother that was praying inside the Capitol.
Rebecca Loverenz.
Yes, Rebecca Loverenz. Oh,
yeah.
God, what a sweet lady she was. And just smiling and incredible attitude.
She's a great grandmother.
Yeah, and still found guilty on all 4 charges. It's like,
yeah. I went through a trial, Don, and you can see just looking at the jury, she didn't have a prayer. Well, none of them had a prayer. No. They have 100% conviction rate from before the DC juries, 95% of whom voted for someone other than Donald Trump in both 2016 and 2020. And it's, the 6th Amendment of the Constitution gives you the right to an impartial jury. These are not impartial juries.
Yeah, certainly not a jury of their peers. And it's again, it's shameful, but we don't have, all you have are the only people that object to what's going on are other MAGA people, and they might be prosecuted themselves if they object too much. I'm sure you know about that. I wonder if you weren't in DC, I don't think, but
No.
the guy that was, I forgot his name too, that was later wrote for the Blaze, I think, but he ended up being arrested.
Steve Baker.
Yeah. I mean, he ended up being arrested later, and he was just covering the story. I mean,
Right.
I'm just glad, I have an alibi. I was in a dentist's office chair that day, but I live in the DC suburbs. So I don't know how crazy this is going to be extended to. But in his case, it was, do you worry that people like me, I've had these shows and I've writings about it now, and you've written a book about it. Do you worry they're going to extend this eventually to, well, you're an enabler, you're a sympathizer, so you need to be prosecuted too?
Well, I live in Kansas City, so I'm pretty far removed from the sort of source of the action. But, a lot of the women I covered drove from places like Colorado and Idaho
Yeah.
in the middle of the winter to be there. What you say sounds extreme, but it's no longer an extreme thought. If they hold power in 2024, journalists will be at risk, or certainly those of us who are, citizen journalists who are not protected by some major media establishment. But even those people are at risk. You saw what they did to, say, James O'Keefe, for instance.
Yeah.
They've done it to Steve Baker. They'll do it to other people. They're trying to do it to Michael Patrick Leahy in Tennessee, just for reporting on the trans diaries and the national shooting. They don't know where they stop.
Well, they prosecuted the woman that found Ashley Biden's journal in the rehab center. They sent her to jail for a month and aren't concerned with what she said in the journal. I mean, it's so one-sided, and that now this little conviction they got of Biden for a couple charges, I'm sure he's going to not serve any time for, but then now they can parrot, no one's above the law. See, Biden prosecuted his own son. Yeah, well, he didn't prosecute him for any of the big stuff, but. So obviously you were watching this, and what made you decide to do a book on the women of January 6th?
I wasn't intending to at all. And then I woke up, this is literally true. I woke up one morning in maybe September, October of this past year. And I said, Ashley, that has to be the title of a book. And so later that day, just so happened that my agent called me and he said, hey, you got any book ideas? I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I called Ashley, and he ran it by the publisher, and I got approval within 48 hours, which never happens in this industry. And then what I realized is that a couple things I needed before I went any further. I needed Mickey Woodhoff's approval because I don't want to write a book about Ashley if she wasn't willing to cooperate. And fortunately for me, she was. And then I emailed Julie Kelly because she's really the matriarch of this whole story. And I said, is anyone writing a book on Ashley Babbitt? And she said, no, go ahead, take a shot. So I said, okay. So my way was cleared because I had to have the book out by the summer to be effective, because if it came out in November, it wouldn't do me any good. So everything fell in place. I realized pretty quickly that to tell Ashley's story, I would need to know more about other women who came because they're still alive to tell their story and to give a more comprehensive picture of why, any protester, let alone women, would go to Washington on January 6th. And of the 10 women I chose, and I chose them more or less at random with, obviously I was going to deal with Ashley Babbitt and Roseanne Boylan, but of the 10 women I profile, 2 of them were killed. Of the other 8, 6 have been to prison or are in prison, and the other 2 are awaiting sentencing. So they could be a full sweep in terms of being absolute victims. They're already victimized. They've all been arrested for doing things that if they were protesting, let's say, the Kavanaugh hearings, they would get, as the Kavanaugh protesters did, even though they disrupted an official proceeding, $30 to $50 fines.
Yeah, and the thing that I've had so many of these people on, but some of them I had on, and they had already been, I guess, released, and they'd served, rather, not long sentences, but it's ridiculous to have any sentences for what they did, the misdemeanors, if it was anything at all. But what people don't realize is that these people are branded for life now.
Sure.
Like they said, I can't. Where am I going to get a job now? I'm a January 6th, a convicted January 6th defendant. You saw what happened. I mean, they're like a scarlet letter. And the public. And what's so sad, Jack, is that millions of Americans, it's not just the media, which of course is horrible, but millions of Americans really hate them because of Trump derangement centers. Anybody associated with them, they don't care if they never work again. They don't care.
No, they don't. In fact, one of the women I profiled, her case interested me because she was so unprotected. She was her name's Christine Priola. She was an occupational therapist for the Cleveland School District. She was like 49 at the time, divorced, and went to Washington with a busload of other people. She carried a sign that said her cause was stopping child trafficking. And she carried a sign to that effect into the Capitol. She's also very pro-life. And someone took a photo of her in the Senate Senate chamber, holding the sign. Within hours, people back at the Cleveland School District were ratting her out to the FBI, literally. I mean,
that's the saddest part, isn't it? Because you had kids turning in their parents and things like that. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, why? How could you do that? But it happened. I'm sure you know. And a couple
they delighted in doing this. They were proud of themselves. They competed to turn her in. She was arrested on January 8th, so she was one of the first people arrested. She lives in a Cleveland suburb, and you would think they had just arrested the Unabomber. The way the media treated her.
Yeah,
I mean, literally. Trucks outside of her house, media trucks, blah, 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 what she did is she walked in an open door, carried her signs, stood there for 10, 15 minutes, started looking for an exit, found her way out, went back to Cleveland. And now, she's arrested, hit with a felony, sent to prison, which would be bad enough. But then they decided that while she was in the hole, the SHU, what they call a special housing unit or whatever, they put a man in her cell, right?
Whoa.
A man who was pretending to be a woman.
Oh,
right?
okay. Okay, so pretend. Okay. But yeah, he had the equipment. Okay. Yeah.
And this is enough sensory privation as it is when you're in a hole. You get no books, no TV, no nothing, And then you have to share it with a guy. You have a single open toilet, right?
Wow.
And you got a guy in there. They did this. A lot of prisons, not everywhere, but in most places, they ratcheted up the punishment against the prisoners, especially it seems the women. They seem to have had, although the women received less stiff sentences by and large, they received more abusive treatment on the ground and in the prisons.
Oh, that's just now one of the women you talk about, Victoria White. She was on my show early on. Back in Gary McBride helped me get some of these. I know you mentioned him. I don't know if you're still commuting, but my audience too would love several of us. Gary, we gave him, I think his first publicity way back when, and had him on the shows and everything. I don't know what happened to him. He hasn't answered us for a long time. Is he still talking to you? I don't even know what he's doing. I assume he's still working on it, but he just isn't communicating with us.
I haven't talked to Gary, but I talked to Victoria not too long ago. And she has an attorney. She's filing suit. She's a victim of the most vicious beating caught on video since Rodney King, right?
Yeah.
And Rodney King kind of had it coming. I hate to say it, but he was resisting arrest.
She didn't lead them on a high-speed chase.
Right. And he weighed 260 pounds, and he was resisting it. But Victoria just got caught in this scrum in the middle of the tunnel. They gassed her. They beat her. They must have hit her 30 times over the head and face. And it's all on video, right? Yeah. And I asked Victoria, I said, why do you think they were so rough on the females? And she said, it was an interesting answer. She said they wanted to rile up the men. And the guy who came to Victoria's defense, which sort of proves her thesis, is now serving something like 7 or 8 years in prison.
Who the man that beat her is?
No, the man who came to her defense.
Okay, that's right. That's what I know, and we'll talk about that because I think it's a different guy, but the same thing happened in terms of Roseanne Boylan, who I understand you You were unsuccessful, and I've tried to reach out to her family too. And apparently, someone was talking early on, but I guess they stopped. You indicated they got burned, I guess, by MSNBC or something. Why? I don't
Yes.
know why they thought MSNBC would possibly do a fair job on her, but she doesn't get talked about at all. And this is somebody and Gary McBride did great work on that. He publicized it a lot and showed and named the officer. Is it Lila Morris?
Lila Morris.
Yeah, and who again, who we know Bird, the guy that shot Ashley Babbitt, but Ashley at least gets mentioned and people know about her. But
yeah, and in Roseanne's case, what's interesting, and I got to give MSNBC credit because they did a very thorough job to a point. What happened is that Roseanne had a troubled life. I mean, she was, she's overweight. She had been a drug addict. She had never voted before November 2020. Her father, who was a good guy, said he had never seen her happier that day than when she first was able to vote because she had been a felon. And but she comes from a very nice family, a very supportive family. She had two sisters, both liberals, as was the husband of one of the sisters. Let's call the husband's name is Justin Cave. But he, after it was found out that Roseanne had died, he was chosen to be the one who addressed the press. He apparently had some TV experience. And he was following the script, and then he went off script. And he started saying, I hold President Trump personally responsible for killing 4 of his, most loyal supporters. And then he blamed it on QAnon and Trump. And then he calls MSNBC because he went to high school with one of the MSNBC's anchors, a guy named Ayman Mohyeldin.
Yeah.
And Mohyeldin, who's an Egyptian native, latched on to this story. Great. Wow, we can sidetrack on.
His eyes lit up. Yeah.
Trump and QAnon ruined this poor woman. And Roseanne was 34 when she died. And then Mohyeldin starts following this story, and then he realizes he's going down a rabbit hole he didn't want to go down, right? Mm-hmm. What he's finding out is that no one will tell him the truth. They're stonewalling him at every turn. Mm-hmm. They sit on the autopsy report for 90 days, refuse to release it. And then when they release it, much to the horror of Roseanne's sisters and her family, they say she dies of an amphetamine overdose.
Yeah.
And yet her death is captured fully on video. She's gassed and pushed by the police. They're clearing this tunnel. She falls under this whole jumble of people on top of her. She's suffocating. When they pull her out, that's when Lila Morris picks up a branch and starts beating her over the head with it like this. Boom, boom, boom. 3 times the branch breaks. It's all captured on video. And when the family members see that they're being totally lied to by the DC establishment, the medical examiner, by everyone involved, and the New York Times had been reporting she had been suffocated under a pile of people. When they get the medical examiner's report, they adhere to the party's essential and final command, reject the evidence of your eyes and ears, right? Mm-hmm. And they go with, poor girl, drug overdose. And the sisters were really horrified that Roseanne, who had spent the last bunch of years getting clean, was now being condemned once again. And I suspect because they knew her history. So if they called her a drug overdose, there's no investigation of Lila Morris, no investigation of this jumble that almost killed another guy, Philip Anderson. Yeah. They're clean. There's no crime scene. There's no crime. It's a drug overdose. That's simple.
And it does get mentioned much. And as you indicated, was it Philip Anderson? Was that the one that tried to rescue her and did save a cop or something too, and still got was that
Anderson was at the bottom of the pile with his black guy. Interesting guy. He had 2 of his teeth knocked out by some Antifa people a couple months earlier at a Trump rally, and he was crying for help. They heard his cries. It's what the guys who pulled her off. I think one of them was Jake Lang, who's
yes,
ultimate political prisoner, not even tried yet. And then finally, once they cleared the pile, Anderson almost died. Roseanne did. she was either dead or dying when they cleared the pile. But then Lila Morris, provides the coup de grace, hitting her over the head with this branch, until it broke. And how does Lila Morris get punished? Well, she gets sent to the Super Bowl a month later as a hero guest of the NFL.
Isn't that something?
Lieutenant Byrd, who shoots Ashley Babbitt,
Yeah.
is now Captain Byrd. So,
wasn't he given one of the? Wasn't he given the highest award? Was it some kind of medal that's along with the other heroic capital officers? Wasn't he given that after the event?
I don't know about that. I don't know about the medal, but I know he was promoted, and he was, as you know, Don. They protected him for 8 months, didn't even release his name.
Yeah, they wouldn't release it. Can you imagine if there was an Antifa guy or a BLM rioter, and especially if the races had been reversed, it was a white guy officer or whatever. I mean, this is amazing. And this guy, if you listen to his, he justified it. I mean, he didn't he call himself a hero and said he saved lives and everything.
He saved countless lives.
Yeah,
I can save. I take pride knowing I saved countless lives. No, the only people who were at risk were the protesters. 4 of them died that day. 3 of them as a result of police action. And then to compensate, and this is where it gets really ghoulish, to compensate for their accidentally creating a martyr out of Ashley Babbitt. I will say this about Michael Byrd. He did not get the memo. He was not in on the plan. What he did threw a total wrench in any inside job planning that was going on. Because at the end of the day, January 6th, the story is about a 14-year Air Force veteran, attractive 110-pounder who shot and killed, on January 6th. They could not let that story stand. So the next day, by January 7th, the New York Times is smearing her all over the place. QAnon fanatic, divorced, businesses struggling, various things. But then they went further. They said, well, let's create a martyr of our own. And when I say this, as though there's agency here, there is. Someone made the conscious decision to create a martyr and then a series of martyrs. And I got an inside track on this because one of the women I cover is named Sarah Carpenter. She was a medically retired NYPD officer, served for about 10 years. She was at September 11th, and I spent a month at that site, just about broke her. And she drives down that morning on an impulse, goes into the Capitol, nothing much happens. She leaves that night, driving home, and she decides to call a friend in Maryland who lives near the highway just to maybe drop by. And she tells her where she's been that day. And the woman she calls, the friend, freaks out. "You killed someone," she yells at her. "What?" She goes, "You protesters killed a Capitol police officer with a fire extinguisher."
Oh, yes, yes.
This is on the night of January 6th.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I mean, Sarah has no doubt about her memory here because it threw her into a total loop. She couldn't even get out of bed the next morning. Now she felt like she was part of a mob, a killer mob. That's January 6th. On January 7th, fortunately for the rioters, I say that with some irony, Brian Sicknick dies of a blood clot in the base of his brain that causes a series of strokes. I was just, I know some people believe that he had been vaxxed 3 weeks earlier. He's only 42 years old.
Yes.
Some people believe those events were related. Mm-hmm. But in any case, it's organic death, natural causes. But they make the decision that day, and they go to the New York Times. The New York Times cites 2 law enforcement officials relate that on January 6th, pro-Trump protesters hit Sicknick over the head with a fire extinguisher, and he was rushed out of the hospital. Yeah. They add this ghastly detail with a major wound and blood flowing from the wound, and dies en route to the hospital. And by January 8th, that story utterly cows the Republicans and the conservative establishment into silence. No one anymore dares to defend the protesters or the reasons for the protests, including the very legitimate, airing of grievances that was to take place on January 6th. And they've gotten away with it. And then to enshrine the martyr status of Brian Sicknick, they put his ashes in the rotunda. And just like they did for Ruth Bader Ginsburg a few years earlier. And then they bury him with full military honors at Arlington. He's been sanctified now. He's been canonized. Yeah. And then in the subsequent, maybe 200 days, 4 other officers die of suicide.
Yes. Yeah.
And they add them to the body count.
Yeah.
So now we're told, juries were told, judges were told, 5 Capitol police officers died as a result of January 5th, 6th.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they fudge the as a result of and just say 5 officers were killed on January 6th.
Yeah, they do. And that's the most amazing thing is that they haven't, the fact that the medical examiner's office had originally Sicknick's family, then I guess they jumped on the bandwagon. Initially, they said, no, he wasn't killed by that. And they knew there was no head trauma or anything, but the media never apologized. And that narrative, they don't go into specifics, but it's still there. Whatever they're bringing up, officers, 4 or 5 officers died that day. What are you talking about? It's like, and how do you try to correct them? And it's inbred. They just believe that. And
it's hard to get it out of their heads. And, in Sicknick's case, what happened is the medical examiner, usually they release autopsy reports within a week, as they did for George Floyd, for instance, even though there's a curious connection here. But in this case, the DC medical examiner's office sat on the autopsy report for more than 100 days and were only released it when forced out by a judicial watch lawsuit. And for at least the autopsy report was honest, said it was, natural causes, unrelated to the events of the day before, stroke, blood clot. And then when it came out, the media didn't quite know what to do with it. I cite in the book a couple of media requests. Hey, you told us he died of a beating death with a fire extinguisher. Yeah. Now you're saying it's this? Why the discrepancy? Well, they were easily satisfied. And then they changed it to, well, it may not have been a fire extinguisher, but he died because of bear spray. Well, that wasn't true either.
Yeah, the bear spray.
Why do you... For 8 years for that one,
And I don't know why there was so much. Why would the protesters have so much bear spray? They kept using that excuse. Why would you go to I don't understand. Was there that much bear spray there? Is that even true? Why would you go to a protest and have bear spray on you? I don't get that.
Well, the reason they brought it, and some of the women, for instance, Lisa Eisenhardt is one of the women I talked to. Mm-hmm. Both she and her son were arrested. He was the zip tie guy. They wore tactical vests, and I'll just say why they brought defensive weapons. Because in November and December, when there were smaller pro-Trump rallies in Washington, D.C., they were attacked by Antifa and BLM.
Yeah. And
several of them were beaten unconscious. And Trump wanted the 10,000 National Guards to protect his people.
Yeah.
He wanted them, he wasn't thinking they were going to the Capitol. He wanted to protect them from the Antifa types.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things about, obviously, January 6th that we could talk about, but I want you to get a chance to talk about what your book is about, which is women. So let's start with the most famous one. Obviously, Ashley Babbitt is the one everybody knows, and because she was, for a long time, it was thought she was the only protester who was killed, but now we know Roseanne Boylan, and as Ashley's mom and other people have told me, these at least 2 others probably that died as a result of police action as well. And I'm sure you know about 2 guys, but so Ashley, and you can see there's a question on there from Chris Graves, who's a great researcher for me. He says, what does Mr. Cashill think of the coroner ordering Ashley's cremation within days?
Well, that's a good question. And I do not know the answer to that, honestly. It's not a question I asked Mickey. Did you ask her about that? Whether
I did, I think, Chris, that I'm pretty sure I texted her that when I was researching, because I'm writing, another volume of Hidden History, and it's going to cover Trump. It may turn into a book just about Trump. I don't know, because there's so much stuff there. So it's going to cover January 6th, obviously. And that interested me. And I thought, well, And I think she answered me by saying there was no mystery to it. So, Chris, I think that's what her mom said. I'll have to look at the text, but I'll tell you at some point exactly what she said. But so, Ashley comes from San Diego. She travels all the way out here, and she's obviously gung ho. Now she was clearly passionate and moved when she was, I think they tried to claim she was trying to break through a window or door or something, which is ridiculous. But that's what they claimed. And what's most amazing to me, and I'm sure you can explain this more, is that when Byrd shot her, she was pretty much surrounded by other officers.
Yes.
So, she was doing something wrong. Why didn't they stop her?
She was the opposite of an insurrectionist because they knew that.
Yeah.
When she walks down this long corridor, she finds 3 police officers, Capitol Police, guarding the doors to the speaker's lobby, it's called, which is the speaker's lobby leads into the House floor. And it's a place where people hang out, I guess. And so she's the first one there. And she's followed by a videographer named Taylor Hanson, who you may have talked to. And she's joking with them. She was 14 years in military police. These are her people, right? She was a member of the Capitol Guardians, the National Guard troop that wasn't called, that should have been called. And so she knows more about protecting the Capitol than these guys do. She really, literally does. Because the Capitol Police are in way over their head. So she's talking to them. And then this crowd of people comes into that same corridor. And now she's getting crowded in. She's only 5'2". If you're 5'2" and you're a crowd of 6-footers, it can be very, very intimidating and risky. She knows that. And so now she starts yelling at the officers because this one guy, Zachary Alam, is punching the glass. Alam, by the way, has multiple criminal charges against him in the past. No ties, social media ties to Trump or MAGA. But he starts punching the glass. And she's yelling now. Ashley's yelling at the police, do your effing job, Call for effing backup. She doesn't say effing, but, she elaborates a little more specifically. And they don't do anything. And then they just walk away. They leave the doors unguarded. And now Ashley is frustrated. She's beside herself. Alam now grabs a helmet and he starts breaking out the windows. Before it was just spider webbing the windows. Now he can break out these transom windows. And Ashley's beside herself. She's so angry at this guy. She grabs his backpack, pulls him around. She's a left-hander. She just punches him in the head with her fist, knocks his glasses off, right? Then she goes past him and she's clearly trying to escape this mob. She jumps into the window frame. She's small enough to get in. Someone yells, there's a gun. That may have motivated her to get in because she doesn't know where the gun is. And then bam, without warning, without identifying himself as a police officer, he's, not uniformed. Michael shoots and kills her. And you're right, there's no about that. How it happened. And that was a fatal shot.
Unbelievable. And the fact that, again, that tells you all you need to know. And people talk about how deep a problem we have in this country is when you could look at a situation like that where there's no doubt to any reasonable person who was the victim and who was the criminal in that situation. And yet Byrd is honored. All the other Capitol Police the next day or a couple of days after that or whatever, lauded as a hero, goes on television for softball interviews where nobody questions him. The media is just, throwing up softballs and brags about it, claimed he saves lives. And, Ashley Babbitt's her mother is Mickey Witkoff, who's, again, been the guest on the show a couple of times, is relegated to going out there and leading the lots of other patriots and the singing of the national anthem every night. I guess she's still doing that outside D.C.
Yeah, every night. Every night. I went down with them one night, and it's very impressive because the night I was there, it was cold and it was raining, and they were out there, and at 9:00, the guys inside the prison, now by phone, used to be, tried to do it when they were closer, they could hear them. They sing the national anthem together, right?
Yeah, it's very moving. In fact, I was very impressed with her just because she suffered the ultimate loss, but unlike a lot of people, she is still concerned with the plight of the others. She was going
Right.
and sitting in on their trials and so forth,
Right.
and she's talking about the J6ers, and it's nice to see that they are banding together, the family members, and they're not turning against the other too much. But so now I think Mickey and them, are they waging their own lawsuit? Or are they doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Aaron Babbitt and the husband,
Yes.
Judicial Watch, have a lawsuit pending. They filed it in Southern California, where they live, the federal court there, and now the Justice Department, in the spirit of fairness, moved it back to D.C. Right.
So they have no chance. Okay.
Now, so
Yeah.
Judicial Watch is fighting that move through the federal courts. I doubt if they'll be successful. And a federal lawsuit, a wrongful death lawsuit in Washington, D.C., has no chance. They're absolutely flouting the Constitution, which insists on a fair and impartial jury. And they could get that in San Diego County, which, by the way, only voted 37% for Trump. It's not like red. It used to be. It's not anymore. But at least they'd have a fighting chance to get justice.
Yeah.
In D.C., where Trump got 5% of the vote, they don't.
Yeah, that's why it's a mockery whenever any of his Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro, any of those people get tried. There's no chance of anybody associated with Trump having any chance at all in a DC courtroom. As you noted, it's like 95% against it. So it's like, I don't even know what the point is. And that's why, I was very critical of Trump for not doing more when he was president. But if he did go after some of these swamp creatures, if he did try them in DC, I don't imagine anyone would be convicted.
No, look what, they had the Durham tried a couple of guys. Sussman, he had him dead to rights. It wasn't an open and shut case. He's acquitted. Danchenko, dead to rights. He's acquitted.
Yes.
Comey, I hate to say it, was right when he said, what's the point of prosecuting Hillary Clinton in D.C., right?
Yeah, exactly. So
she would have been acquitted.
Yeah. So I don't know that's it was his excuse for not doing it. So it makes it difficult to do anything.
Right. It should not have been his excuse. It's almost an acknowledgement that the D.C. courts are not fair or impartial. But there's unfortunately a truth to what he said.
Yeah, no, when Roger Stone was tried and back then, and Trump ended up pardoning him, but his judge Amy Berman Jackson was, again, Democratic Party activist, like so many of them are, and the lead juror in that case was going on social media and posting anti-Trump and anti-Roger Stone stuff during the trial. Right. Now that would have gotten any juror disbarred if the defendant was being charged with being a serial killer. Sure. And the judge did nothing. No. She stayed on the. It's like, this is it's such a mockery of any kind of justice, and I just don't. But you can't underestimate this Trump derangement syndrome. There's millions, probably 50 million at least, Americans that hate him beyond any description, and they don't care. They don't care about justice. They just want. I think they want him, torn apart by wolves in the public square or hanged or something. But I don't even know if they'll be satisfied then. But it's just is. And again, I'm no longer a fan of his, but it's outrageous because all these people that went to support him are being treated so unfairly because of this. And so, we have Ashley Babbitt, obviously, of Roseanne Boylan. We discussed Victoria White, who was on the show. She made some kind of plea bargain or something, didn't she?
Yeah, she had an odd back and forth with the DOJ. What she had that the others didn't have was leverage. Once those videos surfaced, so she ended up serving. I said, I used the word just when I was talking to her, and she flipped out. It's not just. She served like 5 consecutive weekends, or 5 weekends. But there's results.
Well, it's what I think she faced, as I recall, when she was on her show, she was saying she could face 30 years, I think.
That's right.
which is
And
absolutely ridiculous. But
after the video surfaced, her people knew that she wasn't going to get 30 years. It was too blatant. Yeah, but in Trump's behalf, he was the only one now. He's the only Republican I know who's talking openly about January 6th. He's talking about the political prisoners being hostages. He's talking about it being a great injustice. If the rest of the GOP would speak up, or if just some of them would, it would help considerably.
well, isn't that the problem from the very beginning? That whatever you think about what happened in the election, the fact was one party clearly was the victim of a lot of shenanigans, to put it kindly, and nobody except Trump, maybe a few other Marjorie Taylor Greene types, maybe, but the leadership certainly didn't. Mitch McConnell and was Kim McCarthy, I guess, was the speaker last night. The leadership never did, and every Republican should have lined up behind him and said, "Hey, no, this is, we're not going to accept the results of this until this needs to be impartially investigated." But they didn't. They instantly, Lindsey Graham and all of them instantly said, "No, you got to accept this, and this is a fair and free." And it wasn't. It's not the only one. I've written about lots of electoral fraud in the past, but what do you think about why Republicans? I don't understand, because not only were no reforms made out of 2020, there was no acknowledgement there's any wrongdoing. And in 2022 midterms, the same things happened, and nothing. And they're prosecuting Trump and maybe others, I guess Giuliani, for complaining about it. So I don't understand why the Republicans are confident that they can win in this kind of rigged system.
Well, it's I would say, in defense of several U.S. senators and many congressmen, is that they did speak up. My senator in Missouri, I have two excellent senators.
Josh Hawley, was it?
Yeah. He was one of the 12 senators who was going to each state protesting needed a senator to affirm their case. And so a picture of him was shown before the Capitol with his arm raised, right?
Mm-hmm.
Immediately after January 6th, after Sicknick was murdered, right? He became a total, his bright, everyone loves Josh Hawley career was in total jeopardy. His sponsor, John Danforth, was a waste of time and space.
Yeah.
Except for the Clarence Thomas. I mean, other than that, immediately started taking out ads denouncing him. I mean, they were the outraged media in Missouri. How dare he? And they lump him in with the protesters. He is, by the way, I personally think he's maybe the best U.S. senator right now, the most articulate, outspoken, and consistent. But he has not come since then to the defense of the J6ers. Some congressmen have, a few of them, Loudermilk, and was it the guy was it Higgins from Louisiana?
Yeah. I think Massey probably. I think Massey's the best one in all Congress.
Massey's been very good,
yeah.
Because he's been getting inside information out into the public square, especially about the pipe bombers. So, we know, Don, we've seen these people enough for the last however many years. Their courage is not necessarily a virtue that gets one elected and keeps one in office.
Yeah, no, it's but just the idea, I think that if you're going to be, because at this point, and I for years, my hero Huey Long called him Tweedledum and Tweedledee, and High Papa Loam and Low Papa High. I thought there was no difference between the Republicans and Democrats, and there still isn't on some issues. But the one party now has gone so crazy in terms of the woke Democrats. They are absolutely insane, and they seem to control everything. They control the entire media. They control, the celebrity world, and they really seem to have a stranglehold on most of the courts. And the other party is just, I call them the Washington Generals, because they lose all the time. That's all they do. And you have to,
they get paid though,
Yeah, no, well, and that's the thing. It's a cushy job, if you're paid, and they're going to have great pensions, and I don't know what else they get, but I'm sure they get other perks. But at some point, you have that small MAGA base, the Freedom Caucus, that speaks up, but the rest of them don't. And I don't know if they don't flex their muscle. I just don't see. I don't even know what happened, even if they did, because the country is so divided. I mean, at this point, What do you? I really think secession is the only way to go at this point, but I don't think they would ever allow it. We saw what happened in 1860. You know.
No, I mean, and then who secedes? It would. It's not going to happen. In 1860, at least you had major regional differences, so you could
Yes, yeah.
conceivably draw a line. But I tend to be a little more optimistic. I mean, right now, and I talk about this. The word I use in the book is the Jacobins, because I wanted to find
Yes,
one
yes, you
word that could link all these entities together. But and the Jacobins are the model being the revolutionary club that emerged out of the French National Assembly in 1789, and they were joined by some entrepreneurial elites, and they used the power of the mob to get their way until the mob turned on them and started lopping their heads off. Mr. Robespierre, probably the prime example.
Sure.
But the Jacobins right now, the Jacobin Club, as I envision it, they control Hollywood. They control Silicon Valley. They absolutely control the academia. They control lower ed as well as higher ed, right? They increasingly control America's boardrooms, which is frightening.
Yes.
They're worming their way into the military. They control the health industrial complex. And the only things they don't control are a lot of state governments where the resistance is really building. They don't control Congress, the House of Representatives right now. And they don't control the Supreme Court, which is you think they'd be happy in controlling everything else. But the Supreme Court becomes this, like the nettle in their foot that just drives out all of their thoughts of their accomplishments. So
and that I think that is really the only hope at this point the other side has, the Supreme Court, and that's a little shaky too, because I certainly Amy Coney Barrett, especially, and Kavanaugh, they haven't exactly been consistent. So I don't know.
Not Clarence Thomas, but
Clarence Thomas. No, and what's his name? Alito, who's, but I mean, will they succeed in getting him off because his wife flew a flag upside down? I mean, it's like,
that's not going to happen. I just pray that they stay healthy. They don't get Anthony Scalia,
Yes, exactly. That was certainly a very strange death that I wrote about. And, I don't know, when you're a Supreme Court justice and you're found allegedly with a pillow over your head, to me, it warrants an autopsy, but they didn't perform one on him. So, it's kind of crazy. But so anyway, so we're kind of, I wanted you to be able to talk about your book. So tell us, we talked about some of the women, and Rebecca Lovrance, like I said, she is the loveliest lady. God, she was just smiling and such a great attitude. I mean, she's a
sweetheart. Yeah.
I'm sure she reacted that way to her, being found guilty, which is, I'm sure she thought it's the Lord's will, but it's just, it's insane that a woman that went inside for 10 minutes to pray in the Capitol and is a great grandmother, and you're going to throw, I don't care if the jury is biased or not. I mean, how is that justice? But I mean, I guess she may end up going to prison. What kind of prison sentence could she get?
She could get up to a year. I don't think she'll get it. She's at 4. She is, she was Miss Congeniality like 50 something years ago in the Miss Iowa. She was a finalist in the Miss Iowa contest.
Yeah.
And Congeniality is, you could see it because she's a sweetheart.
Oh, she is.
I've met her a few times. And her daughter is very supportive. She has the advantage of having an extremely supportive extended family.
That's great because that hasn't been the case. I mean, a lot of the J6ers I've had on, boy, their family, and that's the way it is with whistleblowers and everything. Families are so fractured now. The country's so divided, but a lot of them have. There's one guy, and that's terrible. I'm forgetting all these names, but one of the guys was in I think he's in a halfway house now. In fact, he texts me every once in a while, and he has nowhere to go when they release him. So he's kind of happy to be there because he's going to be homeless, and his family has rejected him, and he can't get a job. Where's he going to get a job?
No, and that's part of the problem is they've lost their careers. Like the one woman I was telling you about is an occupational therapist, and now last time I heard she was working, flipping hamburgers or something, something like that. If they have supportive families, it's one thing. If they don't, it's terrible. Or like the one woman, and I met her. Her name, you probably know who I'm talking about. Her son turned in her husband, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's
Is that the one that testified him against him at trial? Didn't he? Is that the one that
yeah,
testified
yes,
against him at trial?
yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. And the guy didn't even go into the Capitol, and he's serving multiple years in prison
That's unbelievable.
for inciting a riot. Well, how about Ray Epps? No one was more visibly inciting a riot than Ray Epps, and he gets, only because they had to give him something, 1 year probation, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's the most incredible thing. Again, it just realize if you watch some, and again, I've never been a Republican. Certainly don't want to be one, but some of these guys, Jim Jordan and Massey and people like that, they have done some good questioning of these witnesses to a degree when they get Merrick Garland and people like that up there. But the fact that they can't, I mean, and again, the American people don't care. How do you not care that they won't say no when they talked about, can you, refute the rumor, the allegation that they were a number of people dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol that were working for the FBI, and he wouldn't say no. Yesterday, I was like, how do you expect us to accept this thing as being when you won't even admit that?
No, you're right, and whether you are a Republican or not, I think, I'll be honest with you, I'll be frank. I think if you don't vote for Trump and the Republicans this year, it's borderline treason. I mean, you're sacrificing the end of the any chance we have to redeem this country. That said, I don't give to Republicans. But I will vote for them.
At this point, again, it's the and again, I think the last couple of elections have shown that I don't trust them to count any votes. But the most amazing thing is whatever happens this election, they're going to be half the country is not going to trust it and is going to be upset. Now, if Trump gets in, cities are going to burn.
Yeah,
because they're financed and they go out and do stuff. Now, what happens if Biden wins? I don't know, because of January 6th hanging over everyone's heads, and they see these draconian sentences these people have been sentenced to. Sweet great grandmothers, going in and praying in the Capitol and facing prison time. It would make anyone think twice. But on the other hand, how mad are they going to be, and how desperate? Because I don't know if you saw it today. They're already, I mean, I don't believe polls anyhow, but they're already claiming, somehow they're claiming Biden is now ahead of Trump among rural voters. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
That's fiction.
That's Fox News with the polls, supposedly.
That's even more reason to doubt it. No, what happened in 2020, Don, is that the Democrats had 400 protest sites lined up should Trump have been named the winner, right?
Yeah.
400 protest sites would be probably mostly peaceful protests, as they were during the summer of 2020, which meant that cities would burn. The bizarre thing is the people who live in cities are the people who vote for Democrats, right?
Yeah.
The people who suffer are not. And, I have a summer place in rural America, and it's a plus 20 county. It voted for Obama in 2008.
Yeah.
Now it's plus 20 Trump, and Trump signs everywhere. I'm going to drive across the country. I'm going to drive from Missouri to New York State on tomorrow. Come to think of it, I'm going to see Trump signs all the way, and I will not see Biden signs. Rural America is safe.
Well, it certainly should be. But the fact that they could even do it, and of course, I don't, as a longtime Kennedy fan, I was very interested early on in the RFK Jr. campaign. I don't know what's happened there, because he was supposedly polling in the 20% for a long time, they reported, and then they just stopped talking about it. He stopped pretty much campaigning, and he's not being invited to the debate. So I don't know what's happening there, if whatever support he really even has at this point.
And his problem, too, is that the more he talked, the more people he ended up alienating. He has no natural constituency. I liked him because I read The Real Anthony Fauci, and I admired his courage and his tenacity. But then, every time he speaks on another issue, and then he begins to become a politician and speaking different truths to different audiences.
Yes.
You see that, So it'll be interesting November. Well, I think we could safely say
Well,
that.
it will be, but I think my audience is. I'm what I call a Trump agnostic. And that we're the smallest minority group in the world, but so I get mistaken constantly for a Trump supporter just because I don't. And I also recognize how bad his enemies are and how evil they are.
Right.
My audience is really soured on Trump completely. They don't want to hear anything positive about him all. But I said in 2016 when I voted for him. His rhetoric was fantastic. I couldn't believe it. I'd never heard anything like it in my life. And but after, at the time, I said, whatever happens, the country I thought was already so far gone at that point that I said, this Trump, whatever he is or however he is, he's our last hope. And I feel that way more than ever now because this is absolutely it. So because if the Democrats, maintain power, if they retake the House or whatever, which who knows, they could, especially if they have control of these elections. I don't know. We pretty much become a one-party country, and when you factor in that, if the Republicans took control of both houses and had the presidency, as they did in the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, they would still be offset by the fact that the woke left controls everything else. They control, as you mentioned, all corporate America now. Every big corporation is a globalist, and they support the woke stuff, and the entire media. So that would be offset because the media would be questioning them constantly, but the media is not going to question anything that the woke Democrats do. So it's very dangerous, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I can't have. I've made laughable predictions that maybe Trump will win and they'll have him served from prison and they'll claim he can't do certain things because he's in prison. I don't know what's being planned, but all I know is whatever happens, millions of people are going to be upset. And again, if it's Trump, millions of people are going to be in the streets, and it's probably going to make the summer of 2020 look like a picnic.
Well, I think the only outcome that could ensure a modicum of sanity is a Trump landslide. I'm not even sure. No one's sure that Biden will be the candidate. I mean, I think they're going to wait till after the debate to decide that. We don't know who the alternative would be. None of them are attractive. On the positive side is that the woke movement has gone so far, so fast. They've alienated a huge part of their historic base, including large swaths of Black and Hispanic populations.
Looks like it.
And they made themselves so repulsive that even people who hate Trump understand that the only chance we have to preserve a modicum of justice is to get these people out of office. They've shown us that. I mean, say what you will about January 6th. The reaction to January 6th is the greatest collective injustice against American citizens since Japanese internment. Yeah. It's in Japanese internment, at least had a rationale that was, relatively patriotic. There is no patriotic rationale to this, roundup of decent citizens. And I think whether you like Trump or don't like Trump, I'm voting for the 1,450 people who've been arrested. I want them to have the one shot at justice they could have, and that is through a Trump victory.
Well, and I hope Trump's track record is not very impressive in keeping his promises, but I hope he would pardon all of the J6ers, because that really is the only chance they have. I mean, somebody like Enrico Tarrio, who's I know nothing about the Proud Boys, but I do know if he wasn't even in Washington, D.C., right, and he got 22 years, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's
right. Here's what we know, whether he keeps all of his promises or not. We know that if he's not elected, those people will never see justice.
No, that's true.
They will never be
You're right.
released from prison. They'll never have their sentences mitigated. And no one is safe. No one will be safe if that you or I or people even watching this program will be
Yeah,
killed.
I worry about that all the time because I tell people, if you have somebody like Alex Jones, whatever you think of Alex Jones, the fact he was prosecuted for Sandy Hook, which a lot of people question, and you can easily take from that, okay, kids are involved, so it's emotional, so they can maybe think that's special, but no, because let's say something like 9/11. How many of us have questioned 9/11? There are lots of families involved there. What if they decide to start suing people and
Yeah,
saying, "Hey, you're harassing us by saying this"? And a
right.
lot of us have tried to contact them. Is that
Yeah,
harassment to try to talk to them? So it sets a terrible precedent. And the same thing with Trump. The Trump trials. The things he's being prosecuted on. I mean, the woman, the crazy nut E. Jean Carroll from sometime in the 1990s. She doesn't even remember the year. I mean, imagine you or me or anybody, they could find a woman and bring her out of the woodwork and say, yeah, Jack Cashill, yeah, he raped me in a cloakroom. I don't remember the exact year. And
yeah, right.
I'm painting my trees blue, and my dog is named Tits, and I've been caught on videotape rolling around on the floor like a lunatic, but I'm credible, and that's the kind of thing. So what does that set us up for? Or exaggerating the value of our assets? Everybody has tried to make their property seem worth like it's worth. I mean, these are the things he's being prosecuted on, and then Stormy Daniels. I can't get these people to interact with me on Twitter, but I did try to get her attention today and saying, why did you sign a statement early on that you didn't have a relationship with Trump and that he'd always treated you graciously? Of course, she'll never answer me, but there's a sworn statement out there from her
Yeah.
and these are the now he's
And
a
that's why,
convicted felon.
Don, this could all be boiled down to Donald Trump may not be the model standard bearer. It's not the one we would have, prayed for and asked for, but you got to give him tenacity. You got to give him perseverance. How many people could have withstood what he's withstood over these last 9 years who didn't need to withstand it in the first place, to live an entirely comfortable life? So I got to run, but and I appreciate you having me on this show. But
Oh no,
I
please,
was,
please. Yeah, go ahead. We'll promote anything you need to promote. I thought we had the 2 hours, so that's why I hadn't asked you more.
I'm sorry. No, I was told there was one. I'm sorry, Don. I'll come
No,
back some other time.
no, that's fine. Of course, yeah. Go ahead and anything. Give out anything you want to promote. Give out the links for people. Tell them about your book or anything else you want to promote.
Sure. I mean, to find me, just go to Cashill.com, CASHILL.com, and that is, and you can also find out how to contact me through my website. And I would, I've written, I think it's my 17th book, but this is the first book in which my Amazon ratings are 5.0. There's not been a 4 yet. So it's a powerful book and may make you a little bit angry, but it walks you through the whole story of why these people went to Washington and what they accomplished and what they've suffered. And I hope you can just take a look at it. It's called Ashley, The Untold Story of the Women of January 6th.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't get to read all of it, but what I read through was spellbinding. Is a very important story, and I appreciate you staying on this story. We're going to try to get some justice for them if we ever can. And I appreciate it, Jack. You're doing great work out there. Keep in touch. We'll have to have you back on.
Okay, super, Don. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jack. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, guys. So we have an hour. I didn't know. I thought he was going to be here for 2 hours. I guess I didn't make it clear to him. So I'm looking at, shoot me questions if you want in the chat room here, because I wasn't prepared for this, but we'll figure it out. Okay. I'm looking at, you guys are kind of just discussing it back with, James Doe says it's not Biden, which it shouldn't be. I fear it will be gruesome Newsom. Yeah. They love that guy. God only knows why. I guess he's, I'm not gay, but I guess some people think he's good looking. I don't get why you would vote somebody. I wouldn't vote for Scarlett Johansson for president just because I think she's hot. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I guess maybe some people voted for JFK back in the day over that. Who knows? Jason Barker makes a good point. Trump had the ability to pardon them already. Why would he expect? And that's the thing, is that he could have avoided this, but Trump, he didn't even pardon Assange. And as I said at the time, if he had pardoned Assange and Snowden, I mean, the media would have been, they wouldn't have attacked him quite as much because there's still a little bit of credibility on the left for those guys. For at least half the left probably respects them. So, and it would have been in keeping with his alleged rhetoric, but no, he pardons the president of Death Row Records and some Blackwater executives and everything. So yeah, I don't, I don't have Joe Biggs's and the rest of the J6ers confidence. They all have confidence in him. If I'm sitting in prison with one of these draconian sentences, I'd hate to rely on him to pardon me with his track record. I mean, but Jack Cashill made a point. What hope do they have with Biden? So at least they maybe have some small hope. And Trump is full of it, Chris Buchan, absolutely. But at this point, and again, I'm not suggesting people vote for him. I'm not suggesting people vote at all because I don't think they're counting the votes. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. If I do it, it's just going to be kind of a ritual. And as I said before, whenever the last few times I voted, I said, look, I go by the polling place. If there's no line, I'll go in and out. If it only costs me a few minutes of my time, I'm not going to wait in line for anybody ever. Back in 2016, I did wait in line for Trump because there was, there was a lot more interest, and I hadn't completely soured on him yet. I didn't have much confidence that he was legit. I'm looking at some of these things here, but we can even, we could either just say, what's the point? And that's what it is. But, and people throw up their hands and they ask me all the time, what are you doing? What are you, and all I can do is write and talk about these things. And I mean, I'm basically critiquing stuff and pointing out things that most people already know, but I also come up with some things that maybe people didn't realize or they didn't look at it a different way. But as I say, I don't know what else I can do. I mean, I could theoretically run for Congress, but I wouldn't have a chance because neither party would accept me. I mean, I guess maybe my better bet would be the Republicans as maybe a MAGA candidate, but I couldn't let them know my true beliefs. I couldn't let them know how conspiratorial and populist I was. But even so, I mean, they would ignore me. And again, I don't have any confidence in the public, just like I don't have any confidence in jurors. That's why I say I don't think they need to rig these votes that much. I talk to people. I see people, my own family and friends. And I realize the absurd things they believe. They have no logic at all. And they believe a lot of this stuff. I saw them, taking vaccines and boosters nonstop and then getting COVID supposedly over and over again. And it didn't make them question it at all. So, I don't know. I'm trying to see what else here. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, he's already left. You had another question about, I think, another January 6th event. It's good to see Jason Barker here. And we saw Karen Carpenter and, of course, Deborah Wheeler. Chris Buchan. Okay, Chris Buchan. He's on top of Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson, I think, is just partially and not even that much Jewish, just to let you know, Chris. But whatever she is, she's good looking. Stephanie Hughes. Let's see who we have here. James Doe. Dems have a lot of dirt up their sleeves. Don't be surprised they'll pull off. Well, no, I'm not surprised at all. But I do think that I don't know what they need to do at this point because again, are people really voting? And I think they could probably, if they're looking at, they could probably trust the people to vote the way they wanted them to because they seemingly always have been. They've been very obedient, very pliable in terms of following the narrative. But White Wolf says Trump could have done so many things during his presidency. He could have had the Franklin scandal blown up first. Well, yeah, that would have been, once he did, but just the fact he didn't do the main things. And you saw how he's changing immigration. He said in 2016, that's the only reason I voted for him. I thought, look, if he just does something about immigration, he'd be the best president since JFK. If he just does that, if he did what he said he'd do, ban birthright citizenship, end DACA, end sanctuary cities, have a deportation squad and deport millions. I mean, he was using the D word. No other candidate talked about deporting before him. Talking about the crimes they committed and getting called racist for it, having the families, and I'll have that in my book, the families of Kate Steinle and Molly Tibbetts and all the other poor young girls who were killed by illegal aliens, their families were mad at Trump. They were so committed to being woke, they literally were more concerned about the feelings of Hispanics and immigrants than their own daughter being killed by them. I mean, how do you break through that mindset? I don't know. But Trump obviously did nothing. He deported fewer people than Obama, which is hard to believe, but he did. And I think that's you can find that out there anywhere in many places. Jason Barker thinks Biden will be out as a minimum, maybe Trump's one. People keep saying that. I don't know. We'll see what they do with Biden. But let's see here. Jeannie Poole says she just voted in primaries and runoffs. My faith is not there, but and you saw in what city, what state was it? I think was it Illinois. There was some place where a J6 defendant was running against a Republican incumbent, and of course he lost. And again, if the Republican electorate out there, these are Republican voters, if they really support MAGA, what better example of real MAGA than someone who was arrested and was prosecuted under the January 6th nonsense. Okay, over in I apologize for my eyes. Over in Rockfin, was that Trend? God, my eyes are terrible, guys. I'm sorry. Let me see what is this guy's name is. Turin Bar. He's had a lot of comments over here. He says, I'm suffering from the same delusional thinking you just described to the libtards. Trump did do something. He filled his cabinet with the swamp. Well, of course. Yeah. I mean, I've talked about that a lot. I mean, I said we should, find out if anybody's in his cabinet actually voted for him. Never seen anything like that before. And if that doesn't make it clear what it'd be in term two, then you're engaged. Of course. I mean, it's pretty obvious that I don't see any reason to think he'll do anything differently. But at this point, you know exactly what you're getting with Biden. RFK Jr. is not going to be given a chance. So, I would argue that, and as I said before, if I vote at this point, unless I think RFK Jr. has a chance, which it doesn't look like they're just miring him down in the numbers. They're not talking about him, and that's how they manipulate the vote. They don't have to rig the vote when they do that. They just stop talking about a candidate or saying he has no chance to win. So they're leaving it between the Biden, the two elderly sterling choices we have between Biden and Trump. But if it comes down to that, if I vote, I would vote for Trump for the entertainment value alone, because it will be entertaining. If he wins, it'll be must-see TV. And that may be the best we can hope for at this point. That's how bad what a state our politics is in, that all we can hope for is entertainment. And that will be entertaining because Trump will trigger them, and he'll be triggering lots of people that obviously that aren't on what I call the Trumpenstein Project. If you read my work term, you know that I came up with the Trumpenstein Project. I think Trump's a crisis actor. I think he's all part of this. But other hand, so if I voted at this point, it would be just as for entertainment value, because I think it would be really entertaining to watch the CNN and MSNBC people watch their heads explode trying to deal with Trump. Watch the Hollywood people tweet out that they're going to leave the country and all that stuff. Let's see. James said Trump never did locker room. No, and he's not getting it. But, again, what we talked about there is that, I didn't think that through clearly. And that's not why he didn't do it. But he couldn't have locked her up, because if she was tried in Washington, D.C., there's no jury that's going to convict her. There's no jury going to convict her. Her lawyer was let off. And if you know the conviction rate for federal trials is like 95% or something, unless you're someone on the other side, which is very rare, like Hillary Clinton's lawyer. And those are the 5% that get off. Chris Buchan says, I wouldn't get past the Jacobin loyalty pledge. Well, you're right. And I wouldn't. That's what Cynthia McKinney famously told people, including me, that there was some kind of pledge to Israel that she wouldn't do in Congress. Now, I have no reason to doubt her. She's one of the most honest politicians I've ever met. My favorite politician. I would vote for her in a second. She was great. And she's a black woman out there. So people think I'm a racist misogynist. That's my favorite candidate. But certainly no. I mean, there'd be so many reasons for them not to allow me to run. So that's the problem. It's a shame because I know a lot about politics. Theoretically, I could come onto the job and I know the history and everything. I know what I was doing. I could certainly write legislation. I talk about it all the time, but it would have no chance unless you had some like-minded people in there. So it would be a nice raise for me. You know, I would definitely be doing it for the money because that would be the only thing I'd probably get out of it. Trump was going to release the JFK files. Well, it came out today, and he just gave an interview saying he's definitely going to do it this time. He's definitely going to do it. We'll see. Obviously, Republicans really needed to push to impeach Biden. No, and they didn't. But again, the problem is I now it's 3 or 4 people now. People keep sending me when they hear somebody refer to the Republicans as the Washington Generals, because I think I was the first one to say that. I don't know, maybe somebody else said it first, but I never heard anybody say it. And I thought it up because I think it's a perfect description of them. But the more and more people say that because they're the designated loser. They just lose. That's what they do. They apologize. And at this point, they're the saner party because the other side, the Democrats, and that's my old party. There's no more Cynthia McKinney, no more Dennis Kucinich. There is not a single, even passable Democrat in either house. They're all terrible, rotten to the core. I don't know if we've ever had a situation like that where every single member of a political party was bad. That's impolitical, but they are. So there's nothing there. There are some Thomas Massey, starting with him. There are some what look like decent Republicans. There maybe 20 of them or whatever. Jason Barker said, if they nix Trump and Biden both, who do you think they will put in? God, do you think I would? I don't make any. Like I said, I think they could put Trump in from prison. I think that's a real possibility. And I've said that, and people are saying, hey, there's a couple other people that are saying that now too. But I think, if I'm looking at it from a standpoint of what makes sense to them, what they're trying to push the most, I would say Michelle Obama would be their top choice. But again, because of the pattern of white women voting, women in general, I think she would legitimately win. I don't think you could beat her. And again, that's the demographics now. So let's hope she doesn't run. And there's the added quality there. Again, I'm not saying that the big Mike rumors are true. I have no idea. I've seen the pictures and it's interesting. But if they were true, there's the added bonus of, how about having a great, a great unveiling during a great reveal, kind of a gender reveal party for the country. I can see that possibility. So that would cross all bridges, because then you got the racial thing, you got the women, maybe, or do you have the transgender, whatever. You have everything covered there. And obviously the politics are typical authoritarian leftist nonsense and anti-white to the core. So they fit the great replacement. And that's another thing, that if Republicans are a real opposition party, they would start talking about the anti-white agenda and the great replacement, instead of their leadership continually trying to prop up black candidates like Herschel Walker. It's absolutely ridiculous. Jason says, Nikki Haley's a possibility, but I think she has alienated many. Well, I saw something in the USA Today where they were basically accusing Trump, saying Trump should pick Nikki Haley to bring the Republicans together, which is absolutely ridiculous. Because again, it will prove that if anyone has any doubt left, that Trump is a farce and the MAGA movement is a farce, because Nikki Haley is just, she's indistinguishable from Democrats at this point. I mean, she's like a rhino. She's a politer version, not quite as hysterically insane version of woke Democrats, but she's all for all the same stuff. So, warmonger to the core. I mean, this is somebody that's like Hillary Clinton, kind of the Indian version of Hillary Clinton. But him doing that would signal if you need to know anything else, this is what the second Trump administration is going to be like. Nikki Haley or Marco Rubio would be awful. To show anybody that he possibly had the tiniest bit of sincerity, he would go out and find Tucker Carlson or Vivek Ramaswamy, Thomas Massey. Well, he hates Thomas Massey. In fact, he wanted Thomas Massey defeated because Thomas Massey called him out on something a while back. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, somebody that fit with the MAGA rhetoric a little bit. But I don't make predictions, but if Trump does that, it will be the first time he does. Tulsi Gabbard, even maybe he might. There've been rumors about that. He will pick the worst possible candidate from a MAGA standpoint, because that's what he did all throughout his 4 years. He consistently did it, and then he left his supporters scratching their heads and claiming he was playing 4D chess. I think it will be Nikki Haley or Marco Rubio, or maybe Tim Scott, the empty suit, the black rhino there, who would be worthless, but he can claim he named the black guy. It'll be somebody very unimpressive like that, I think. But we'll see what he does. Jason says she's cold and not enthusiastic. He certainly is cold, that's for sure. Chris says some teasers from American Memory Hole tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Yeah, we can do that. For those of you who don't know, American Memory Hole is now coming out August 27th. They picked it back because I had to wait for the last few blurbs, including one from the great G. Edward Griffin. He wrote a nice blurb, and I think this guy's 90-some years old. I'm amazed he did it. He's a legend. So very honored with that. And Sam Tripoli, who many of you are familiar with, wrote the foreword. And so excited about that because I think hopefully it will open up a new audience for me because, Sam's from the world of comedy. He's friends with Joe Rogan, people like that. Maybe it'll let my work get out there beyond the choir that I'm preaching to, which is wonderful. You guys are great. But the idea of anything, to be able to the only way we're going to change anything is we have to convert some normies. We have to. That's why I argue all the time for YouTube and Twitter and Facebook that we need to fight for those platforms. Yeah, they're no good because they're run by the same people. But the problem is all the people go there. All the people who aren't in our choir are there. And, it's easy to, although, even there we argue, the people that we're arguing all the time about little minutia. But we have to convert those people. We have to get those people to understand that, what are you supporting here? You're because of your hatred for this giant orange man that the media has constructed this guy for you, his offensive personality, his obnoxious personality. You're willing to tolerate, lawfare, the law being completely subverted, political prosecutions of everybody you don't like. You're willing to tolerate obvious massive vote fraud, ballot boxes being delivered in the middle of the night, videotaped, people taking secret boxes out from under desks and counting them after they told everybody the counting was done and sent them home. People, in some poll places, covering up the windows so people can't look in, not letting observers get close enough to see. I mean, this is not transparent. This is not democracy. It may be their version of democracy, which is hard. It's a Ukrainian Zelensky type of democracy. But this is these are the people we have to reach. And I think that they can be reached, maybe. And I'm confident, for instance, if myself or anybody here, any of the guys you like, David Knight, Tony, Billy Ray, Chris Graves, and anybody that has a show that's Guard Goldsmith, any of the people, Jason Barker, any of the people that have the shows that are that have access to basically the same audience or largely the same audience, if any of us were given a big platform with great production qualities and a big staff and all the stuff that these people get, the Rachel Maddows, I'm pretty confident that we could compete successfully against Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity. These people, they have nothing to offer, but those big budgets. And the platforms because again, the normies turn on the TV. If any of us were given, that's how, and I think we could convert millions eventually. It might take a while, but people tune into you to hate you. They turn into hate watch. Lots of people do that, and lots of people would tune in to hate watch me, I'm sure. But eventually, I'm confident that I would convert some people, and I think a lot of the others would too. And it's not a level playing field. We're not being allowed to compete fairly in the marketplace of ideas. But that we need to do that. Chris Buchan says his favorite Biden story is when he allegedly farted in front of Kamala. She was supposedly laughing like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Kamala laughs at everything. So I guess maybe a fart would cause her to laugh for 2 weeks. I really don't know. But she's an easy audience. Let me tell you, if I ever do open mic again as a comedian, I would want Kamala Harris fitting front row center, because no matter what I said, I'm pretty confident she'd be laughing. Jane Stowe talks about the money spent for foreign wars and not for our homeless or running infrastructure. I've talked about that a lot. That's populism. And that's real America first. And which, again, Trump is not talking about that anymore. Stephanie Hughes says, downtime to get some readers. I would like more readers. I'm not sure what you mean, but I hope, I hope every one of you is subscribed to me on Substack. That's one place I am growing. It's the only place I'm not shadow banned. And you go to donaldjeffries.substack.com. It's called I Protest, just like this show. And you'll see me. I write regularly. And you'll be able to keep up with my rants, and I'll be promoting American Memory Hole as much as I can. In fact, we're going to be having Chris Graves and Peter Sekosh. People have heard me talk about them many times. They're just incredible researchers, and they help me a lot, especially with this book. And so we had so much material, even though it's a long book. It's well over 400 pages, but a lot of material just couldn't make it in there. We just had too much. So I'm going to be probably publishing some of that stuff. I don't know how much. We'll see how much stuff about FDR and Woodrow Wilson and JFK Jr. and Oklahoma City and all that stuff that we cover in the book, because we cover a wide range of topics. And just so people get a flavor for the book and whets their appetite for it. So I'm not sure what you mean, Stephanie. Maybe you can clarify that. I do. I obviously, all writers need more readers. I'm looking at what we have here. Chris Buchan said, if the election happened, he's obviously going to win, Don, but they'll just rig it again. He obviously wanted to win. Well, I don't know that he'll obviously win, Chris, because and certainly I don't see any way he could win in a landslide, because the country is completely divided. And we look at maybe the people we know. I mean, we don't know. Maybe we don't know that many people that like Biden. I walk around my very largely white middle-class neighborhood, what's left of it, and I'm very grateful for it. Man, I feel blessed when I walk through this neighborhood. We hear a pin drop. It's it's wonderful. I know this is what represents the American dream, and I want my children and grandchildren and whatever that I hopefully have them someday. I want them to be able to experience it too, and they're trying to kill that. But when I walk through this, again, almost exclusively white neighborhood, middle-class neighborhood, last election, I think there were 2 Trump signs. I know there were more Trump supporters than that, but they were scared to do it because one of the signs was torn down. And I guess the rest of the people said, it's not worth it. I don't want to have something vandalized. And then, but I saw plenty of Biden signs. As I'm walking around, now, I see plenty of signs for Jerry Connolly, who's our awful congressman, who's been in there for I don't know how long. He usually runs unopposed. So, yeah, I would run against him if I could. And I think I should be able to beat him, but he would never debate me because he has nothing to debate except for a horrible record. And but he'll, again, people, and I want to go up to these people. I don't, again, I don't want to cause fights, but I would like to ask them, why don't you feel ridiculous putting a sign for an incumbent that's been in there forever who is running unopposed? What kind of democracy do you think that is when it's one thing to have only 2 choices with the stupid 2-party system, but you literally don't want any choice? I thought you're pro-choice, but not in terms of elections, I guess. I mean, so I can see in this neighborhood, and I can only extrapolate that out to, now Fairfax County is because all the government workers here, it has become very, largely blue. Okay. Cat Mandunt says, yes, Trump is an actor. He definitely is. Absolutely, Chris. That must have excited you, Chris Buchan, when you saw what Thomas Massey said to Tucker. I haven't seen anybody in Congress say that since Paul Findlay, to be honest with you, and that was they ran him out of Congress in the 1990s. Massey came on Tucker and said, "Yeah, all of them have APAC handlers." So, Chris, that should be your boy there. I mean, Thomas Massey's great. I mean, again, maybe he's a phony too, but he's the best ones I see out there. The best one I see out there. James Doe said Trump flaps his gums a lot. He absolutely does. Let's see. Jason, I envy you going around with your grandson. I'm looking for those grandkids. Chris Buchan says, so many blacks are showing support for Trump after his conviction. They really love. Well, look, we'll see how that translates in the election. I'm not sure. And Trump is so excited about that. We'll see. I don't know. Okay. James Joe says Big Mike will never come out. Well, so far he hasn't. And she also thinks he's going to be told who his VP is. Well, probably so. I think they're told everything. Chris says it's going to be Nikki Haley. Lots of people. I don't blame you for hating Nikki Haley. She's awful. Oh, Stephanie Hughes says readers isn't glasses. Yes, I do, Steph. Well, I'm too vain, I guess, but I can still see these. It's just when I look over because I have the Rockfin chat on another screen, so I have to look over kind of. It's white on black. It's a little harder for me to read without my glasses. This one I think I can read pretty well, and maybe I look like I'm squinting, which I probably am. Let's see. Let me get Kamala, Chris Graves said. Hope and despair. Okay, good to see you here, Hope. No, you're not late. We're just kind of ranting. Any questions you all want to ask me? Ask me. Chris says, I'm sure Massey isn't perfect, but he does seem to be traditionally minded conservative. At least some comes. Chris, I think that's the first public official I've ever heard you say something good about. So Massey must be incredible. Yeah, we still have a half hour left. So anyhow, that's the, I guess that's my take on the elections. I'm trying to figure out what other issues we could discuss. Again, I wasn't prepared to do that, but let's talk a little bit more about the book American Memorial and my book Masking the Truth. And again, so many of you guys have supported it so much out there, and you probably heard me talk about this. But Masking the Truth, How COVID-19 Destroyed Civil Liberties and Shut Down the World, had a foreword by Sherry Tenpenny, who's big in the world of COVID criticism. Just, they've just done everything they can. It got off to a good start, but they have done everything they can to shadow ban that thing out of existence. Amazon got rid of the Kindle version months ago. Not there. Barnes & Noble, even before that, got rid of both versions, paperback and so it's not there. So I put up the link many times. If people want to buy it and support me, you go to the Midnight Rider news site. You can look at my social media. I post it many times. You can just do a search for Donald Jeffries Masking the Truth, Midnight Rider News, or Lulu. Either one of those, and I'll bring you to it. And anyhow, people need to support that, and I'm still waiting for somebody in the independent media with a big platform to grab hold of that book, but they just, they avoid it like the plague. And I don't know why, because it should be the book they've been waiting for, but they just don't do it. So anyhow, we're still trying to promote that as much as we can. And my JFK book, Pipe the Bimbo in Red, which I co-wrote with William Law. I've been putting out a lot of books. This is 3 this year. So it's pretty amazing. And American Memory Hole, How the Court Historians Promote Disinformation. That's coming out now at late August 27th. It's out there for pre-sale. And I appreciate lots of people have already bought it for pre-sale. And as I told them, they told me, what I've noticed, because Skyhorse is the biggest publisher I can get. It's a division of Simon & Schuster. A lot of big names get published there. Woody Allen, Oliver Stone, Roger Stone, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and it's so I'm gratified to be with those big names, but I've noticed the difference between my last book, being published by them, and this one where they really are, all publishers are cutting back. And so, cutting costs, and they used COVID as some kind of excuse. So I assumed this would have an audio book like two of my other three Skyhorse books, but it may not. And apparently they said it's all dependent on how it does in pre-sales. So if you want to see an audio version, that would be the way to go. Chris Buchan says, believe it or not, he thought Goldwater was pretty good. And so was Jim Trafficant was great. I mean, that's one of the last Democrats that I really loved. And they railroaded him. That guy was fantastic. Chris Gray says Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum have a NASA moon landing propaganda film coming. Well, I don't. I'm sure I don't like Scarlett Johansson's politics. I'm just saying, looking at her, I think she's pretty attractive. That's all I can say for her. I'm sure she's, a pea brain in terms of discussing anything else. And there's Karen Carpenter with a lovely new picture. And I already heard somebody comment on it. It's her and her daughter. And it is kind of hard to distinguish between who's who there. So nice looking picture there, Karen. Children's Health Defense has been calling out the bird flu nonsense for a very long time, too. And that's RFK Jr., and he's done some good work. Children's Health Defense is who I sent them the PDF of Masking the Truth, and they said they would look at it. They haven't answered any of my follow-ups. And it's so frustrating with that, because obviously they should really be interested in that book. But I don't know. Appearing on InfoWars, the American Journal with Harrison Smith at one time, I thought that would move the barometer a little bit on. I get a little bit of a bump, but not since then. I haven't been back. I thought maybe it would result in Alex having me on. No, I mean, this should be something they're interested in, and they're just not. Let's see. Isn't Gurley 5 said, isn't Jared Kushner a Zionist? Yeah, he certainly is. And so is his father-in-law, Donald Trump. And that's the situation we have here, because RFK Jr., is, I've talked about this before, his candidacy, I was excited about it a little bit. I mean, I started being interested in politics, and his dad I was 11 years old when he ran for president, and I was very excited about that. That's where I discovered my love for politics, the primary process, delegate counts, and all that stuff. I was a good Democrat. And was crushed, cried like a baby when he was killed. And so his son running for president, his name, and saying lots of great stuff, coming out and saying publicly the government killed his father and his uncle. Never thought I'd see a presidential candidate doing that. Started out strong, but obviously once he started talking about Israel and Rabbi Shmuley came on board to handle him, very disillusioning. And now he doesn't, he's talking about a worm in his brain and all kinds of crazy stuff. So you think Trump and Biden would be two easy candidates to beat, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it's when people say RFK Jr. is the psyop too, I can't argue with him at this point because of the way he's run the campaign. I mean, he should have been, and certainly should have been able to debate them as well. But of course, they wouldn't let him do that. But even so, I'm not confident about what he might do there either. So, at any rate, so I'm looking over here. Yep, Turnabar says Trump is not only an actor, he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. That's exactly right. And so anybody that thinks that this is on the up and up, remember, Trump is a WWE Hall of Famer. So he's good at this stuff. Not to mention, he was The Apprentice was a big hit of a reality TV show. So when people say he's a reality TV actor, he really was. Chris Gray says Oprah or Big Mike or Dwayne Johnson. Yeah, I mean, pretty much, any of the most famous blacks, I think they would be pushing. Oprah's in. If she's in. Hope and Despair says I'm spot on. I'm not sure what I'm spot on about, but hopefully I'm spot on about something. But so, and The Rock, the ridiculous Rock, talking about WWE. Maybe Trump can run against the Rock or something to be President WWE. Oh, Big Mike. Okay, yeah. And Trumpenstein. Thank you. Yeah. Chris Buchan says we'll get a President Camacho. Yeah, well, we're how far away are we from that, really? I mean, at this point, really, we're just it's They might not have, it might not look exactly like him, but Trump has a lot of President Camacho in him. And, he doesn't look like him, but we're also not very far from an idiocracy. I mean, we have really pretty much gotten to the point where, I'm sorry, I'm looking over at the latest question. Okay, I'm not sure what Michelle is talking about. If she could punch through 4 Steve Pieczenik's. Okay. Whatever happened to Steve Pieczenik, by the way? I don't even know if he's where he is. David Knight should know. And somebody earlier, I don't know if it was Jeannie, somebody was talking about David Knight. And I love David Knight. I love him, but I think he really is concentrating so exclusively on Trump now. And Alex Jones. I think I think there's something personal there. I understand, lost a great job. And Terry Crews making introductions. Exactly. Well, maybe we can get Terry Crews or why not? Yeah. But, I was listening to David the other day, and so much of his stuff, obviously, I agree with, because David, I think, is one of the few people out there that is on the same page as me in terms of not accepting that there ever was a COVID-19 because it was never proven to exist. It's never been isolated. So he doesn't buy into the ridiculous, the China lab leak theory. So I really love that. And he certainly should hold Trump's feet to the fire too. But I think, again, it's and maybe some people that like Trump say I concentrate on him too much. That's because he's a perceived opposition to this. No, he's not. He's like Goldstein in Orwell's 1984. But we can't lose sight of how bad the other side is. And that's why I say when people, want to get on me for saying something good about Tucker Carlson or whatever, and I'm just, or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Massey or any of these guys, and say, just look at the other side, okay? If you think Tucker Carlson's a liar and horrible and everything, then what does that make Joy Reid or Rachel Maddow or Anderson Cooper or anybody really on CNN or Joe Scarborough and his wife? What does that make them? I mean, because Tucker Carlson appears to be saying, I agree with 99% of what he says now, pretty much. So what does that mean? I don't get that, but for some reason we don't call out that side too much. James Doe says they're all pretty much Stepford presidents. Well, they probably are. The Kung flu, that's true. The bird, and I guess we should talk about the bird flu some, because that's and I'm old enough to remember the what was it? The Hong Kong flu, I think it was. Probably late 60s, something like that, maybe, where they had this scare. I remember me as a little kid hearing about it and thinking, wow, is this damn, I've got a RFK Jr. thing going on myself here with my voice. Where it was an early example of fear porn, where they're talking about the Hong Kong flu. And I remember my mom and them talking about it a lot. And of course, she embarrassed, I remember we went to a Chinese restaurant to eat. And of course, she used to love to be a comedian too. I get a lot of that from her. But so, of course, she has to tell the Chinese waiter, do you have the Hong Kong flu? And he's going, no Hong Kong. So she thought that was hilarious to get him to say that. But there was nothing. It was a big nothing burger like all these other ones were until COVID. Chris Buchan says, let's see here. I'm trying to see what I missed here. Yesterday, David Knight said some really hard-hitting segments about the aftermath with regards to the vaccine. Hope and despair says. Absolutely. Yeah, Chris says 68, 69. Yeah, it was late 60s. And Girly 5 says, what about going on Mel K, Sarah Westall, or the Common Sense Show? Well, I've been on Mel K's show. I've been on Sarah Westall's show several times. Common Sense Show, I'm not sure I know who that is, who hosts that. Sarah's a friend, and she needs to ask me back on. I haven't been on for. Of course, I don't think I've ever had her on. So maybe she thinks, why didn't the guy ever ask me on? I need to contact her about American Memory Hall, though, so we'll go on there. I've promoted all my books on her show. And of course, Chris Buchan particularly doesn't like Mel K. I don't know why. Hong Kong Fooey. I remember Hong Kong Fooey. Let's see what I'm missing here. Sarah Westall's annoying with her stupid Wisconsin. Well, she's got an accent, Chris. She's from Wisconsin, and some of us think it's charming. I like Sarah. She's been very good to me, and she's done some good stuff on COVID and everything. Really, I mean, she's good. She's we don't have exactly the same interest, and I think. I know for a while, I think she was into QAnon. A lot of them people. And I need to have Dustin Nemos on because Dustin is, at the time, he was one of the biggest backers of QAnon. He was one of the main people that wrote Where We Go One. No, The Great Awakening. Where We Go One, We Go All. It went to #1 overall on Amazon. And, it just, I don't know how much money they made on that book, but I wish I'd been associated with it. But he was one of the main people that wrote it and promoted it or whatever. And this guy has gone completely a turnaround. He's now, and Chris Buchan, let's just put it this way, I think you'd like him. He's talking a lot about Chris's favorite subject, and I'm pretty sure he's turned on Trump and everything. He's certainly turned on QAnon. Yeah, Chris knows about him. Nemo says Trump is the son of perdition, so I don't know. So I'm missing here. He knows who he is. I'm sure you do. Turn over here in Rockman says, about the 1976 H1N1 hoax they pushed faxes for. Failed a lot. At that time, I was not really... I wasn't paying attention to that stuff as much. I just, I tended to ignore the fear porn. I know there was the... what the hell was the thing in Pennsylvania that killed 2 people and they tried to make a big deal out of? That was in the 70s too. Oh, what the hell was that? Maybe somebody will remember. But it was, again, and that's why really when they did the COVID thing, I didn't pay attention to that at first either. I just shocked because they do this like they're doing with the bird flu. They've done it historically and they just go only so far and then they drop it and it's on to the next story. Obviously, COVID, that wasn't the case with COVID. Hope and Despair says, Don, if you or anyone else noticed, the only 100 bills printed recently were from 2017. No recently printed dates, and it's made me contemplate. Well, Hope, I don't have a lot of $100 bills handy. I haven't seen too many $100 bills, so I didn't know that. But I don't know. We know they're trying to get rid of cash, so maybe that would stand to reason. Chris Buchan says, I have a history with dark journalists. Maybe you can get him to tell the story. It's pretty funny. You mean to get Dustin? Does Dustin have a history of dark? I mean, dark journalists, for those of you who don't know, and Kat Goy is not in the chat, but Kat Goy was friendly with him for a while too. And I tried to tell her dark journalist did it, Daniel from Dark Journalist, and he's blown up since then, of course. But back then he wasn't that big, and he had me on to promote Hidden History, probably 2015. And I thought the interview went great. And he did too. He never put it up anywhere. And when I was first doing interviews, I was more interested in saying them. Now I don't really care. But back then I go, let me see how I looked, see how I sounded and stuff, see if I'm doing okay. And he never posted anywhere. And he kept saying, I'll put it, and it got to be a month, 2 months. And then eventually he stopped answering me about it. So I just kind of say, hey, look, can you at least send me the video file? I feel uncomfortable with me. And I do feel uncomfortable with having video of me out there. I mean, like 2 hours of video is a long interview that could be chopped up and used. You don't know. I'd like to have that just for my own, resources. And he never answered me. So I don't know that. That's the story with that. Other than that, I don't know anything. We seem to agree on stuff, but I put a bad taste in my mouth. Karen Carpenter likes Sophia Smallstrom's where I like her too, but she's another one that I emailed a while. I tried to get her on the show a long time ago. She never answered me. Jeannie Poole says, yeah, 76 is a swine flu scare. Oh, okay. I missed that. James Doe said I should be on Dark Journalist. Okay, now that's why I have been, and I don't think he's going to ask me back. So again, I don't know why. Maybe he'll tell you. Doctor, well, are you talking James Doe? Are you talking about Joseph Farrell? I don't know who James Farrell is. Joseph Farrell has been on my show, and I used his research. Thanks to Peter Seacosh, who really is friendly with him. I used some of his research in American Memory Hole. I don't know if that's the same one you're talking about. Let's see. Yeah, Joseph. Yeah, no, he's a great guy, and it was a very popular show. People loved him, and yeah, I have to try to get him back on because we definitely see eye to eye on a lot of things there, and he did great work on Joe McCarthy. This book will have a lot on Joe McCarthy, American Memory Hole, and again, Peter Seacosh really helped with that. The basically the way I researched it and wrote about it. McCarthy, I think, comes off as a genuine American hero in this. He's certainly not the villain that the people have claimed he is. And Chris Bucket says he's a phony, always blaming Nazis. Well, everybody does that, don't they, Chris? And I've talked about that. If you look at my archives, I think I wrote something called Nazi, the slur that everybody loves or something. And it is ridiculous and the right loves it as much as anybody. And Alex Jones, boy, that's the one who's, and my son will tell you, I get so irritated with him. He can't go 5 minutes without talking about Hitler. And I'm saying, why do you keep, it's not relevant to what we're talking about anyhow. And yes, Joseph Farrell was a great guest. Houston says Bobby Jr. would be a good interview. They shut him out of the base. Well, I would love to have him, and he has my primary publisher. We share the same publisher, and they were involved in his campaign, and I've tried to get him. And I had Dill Bigtree on my show a while back, who's one of his big aides, but he knows who I am, and I think maybe I scare him a little because I know so much about the Kennedys. I write so much about them. Maybe he thinks I'm some kind of Kennedy stalker or something. But I would love to talk to him. I wanted him. He was my first choice to try to write the foreword to American Memory Hole, but they just couldn't get him. And let's see. Okay, Chris Bucket says that's because AJ's a big fat funny. Well, he may be, and again, but that's he's being used now again. Through the Sandy Hook stuff, that's affecting all of us, that we are all possibly paying the price for that, no matter whether he was in on it or not. And Chris says, yeah, American society is totally phony. Even the truthers are mostly phony. Yeah, it's hard. And that's why I get in a lot of trouble because I'm the kind of guy, it's weird that I obviously am cynical about things. I don't trust anyone in power for the most part. I'm skeptical of all of it. But individual people, I tend to accept them at face value. So when I see somebody like Tucker Carlson and who is saying all this great stuff most of the time, I'm aware of his past. I know his father did. I know what he was saying, 10 years ago about 9/11 and everything. I'm aware of all that. But I'm just looking at what he does now. And I accept people at face value. And any of these so-called, and I know that there's going to be a disagreement. I think people can honestly disagree on, for instance, the question of the Jews, like Chris Bucket would want me to say, where they would want to accent it more than others. Some people want to stay away from it completely because it can take over everything. It can lead you down that rabbit hole so that you don't see anything else. Adam Green, I don't know what Chris Buchan thinks of him. No More News. No More News, I think it is, something like that. There's a guy that just is completely obsessed with Jews, and he's another one I tried to contact to get on the show, and he didn't answer me, of course. Well, thank you, Chris. I am intellectually honest, and I try to be respectful of people when I don't. And that's okay. Chris thinks he's a big phony. I don't. I don't like his attitude. He's very, I don't know. And he thinks he's more than he is. Like I said, when people don't answer me, I don't understand it, because you have somebody like Cindy Sheehan, a great friend of mine, who was on her soapbox again for Father's Day, and we just had a wonderful conversation. She's way on the left. I think she calls herself a socialist. Maybe she thinks she's a Marxist. I don't know, but she's completely honest. She's absolutely pure anti-war, which I love, pure free speech, which I love. So we get along great. But whenever I want to get a hold of her, she answers me almost right away. She's almost as good as John Barber in that regard. Nobody's better than him. But these people with the YouTube channels that I've never heard of, but have a million followers, I don't know who the hell they are. So I thought, well, let's try talking to them. And again, they never answer me. I'm trying to get. I'm looking at Kian Akuma said, you can become like the radioactive alien, David. Yeah, no, David Duke, believe me, I'm pretty sure I could get David Duke on, but I don't know. I don't know that I want to go there. I don't know that what good that does me. And again, David Duke when Alex Jones had him on, he can't talk about anything but Jews. He's like Al Sharpton in Blacks. He just, what do you think with anything besides that? And he said, Chris Bucket said he didn't let anybody get a word in. When AJ had him on, Alex let him talk more than any other guest I've ever seen. And David Duke kept trying to start fights, saying, you're not letting me get a word in. And Alex was bending over backwards to be fair to him. No, I know, Chris. I know Rents would get him on from, and he's mentioned my name. I saw in some article before David Duke did. He knows who I am, obviously, but I don't know. I just don't know what good that would do, but it's possible. Who knows? I'm trying to see if I missed anything here. Okay. Never trust anyone with 1 million followers, Houston said. Well, yeah, and it's like, for instance, I want to do a show. Guys know I'm very much concerned with the militarized police forces, and I've written about that. I watch these videos, and there's so many good YouTube channels out there. They all have big followings. I've written to every one of them, and only one guy got back and said, give me an example of your show, which I sent him, and I've never heard back. The rest of them don't answer it. I was hoping I could get 2 or 3 of them at one time, and maybe we'd show some of these videos, the outrageous things that cops are doing out there. I thought it'd be great. I can't get them on the show, so I don't know. I don't know if they look and figure I don't have that big of an audience, but I don't know who else is wanting to interview these guys. So same thing with the MGTOW followers. I want to do a show. I'm still going to do that on incels and all that stuff. I'm the fact that it's so hard for young men and young women to date now. They don't want to date. I don't even understand it, relationships. But I can't believe I can't get any MGTOW representative to come on. And some of them had me on their shows, and they won't answer me. So I don't know. I don't know what to do. So that I do struggle sometimes to get guests for you guys, and it's very frustrating. Anybody that Chris Graves can tell you that. I'm very frustrated sometimes trying to get people. Chris Buchan likes Rents. Cool. That's, so many people don't like him, Chris. And he's, people criticize me for going on there. And he's a shill. He's the central. I mean, Jeff is like, I don't agree with him on everything, but he said nothing but great stuff about me. He promotes me. And he lets me say whatever. When we get on, there's nothing scripted about our Monday talks, which so many people listen to. I hear from so many people. I wish more people would listen to my show. I said, you do know I have my own show too, right? I'm not just on Rents. But when we talk, we don't. I never know what we're going to talk about when we go on there. One of us just brings something up, and we just go from there. Half the time we talk about entertainment. James Doe says, how about getting Ron Paul on? I had Ron Paul on several years ago. Ron Paul wrote the foreword to my book, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776, 1963. I asked him to write the foreword to this book too, and they never got back to me. So I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to be associated with me that much. But yeah, certainly be honored. Jeff Gray from Honor Your Oath Civil Rights. I have not heard of him. I've not heard of Thomas Jefferson audits either, Chris. Chris says, Rents is how most of us found out about tonight. Yeah, so many people have. So I'm grateful to him. He has a big audience, and it's wonderful. I really enjoy this Monday night, especially knowing how many people are listening. And I'd like to see more people listening here, but I'm grateful for everybody who does. Anyhow, so I appreciate everybody being here. We're just about rounding down now. Hope and Despair says, I have a great guest regardless, Don. Just like Jason, Guard, Franco, the rest don't even trip you. Exactly. And that's, we get what we can here. And I like, more and more the theme show. So I lots about January 6th, and I want to do a show on relationships. We had a show about parental alienation last week. I'd like to do that again. We've had a show about people down on their luck, the other half of America. I want to do that again. People that are struggling in this land of plenty. That's why I'm still a populist. But at any rate, we're just about out of time. So thanks to everyone in the chat. I think I pretty much caught. There's my friend O.R. Busy. Good morning from the UK, sire. He said it's 1 minute after midnight there. It is 7:01 p.m. here in America 2.0 on the East Coast, O.R. Great to see you. Anyhow, thanks everybody for listening. So we'll talk to you next week at the same time. Be listening next week, 5 p.m. Eastern Time Protest. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you then. Take care.